You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in absolutely gorgeous, rainy Northport, Florida. So I always throw the gorgeous part in there, but remember tonight to drive home very carefully because oil and water do not mix. I know we've been getting a lot of rain, but the oil and water on the roads make the roads extremely slippery. I'm afraid people will hydroplane tonight. So just really take your time, get home safe, and let's reduce the speed a little bit so that we all get home safe. But I've got a very special guest in the house, and any listeners out there in listening land, a very special guest in the house is Commissioner Langdon. But if you have questions, I'm paying attention on Facebook, Real Talk 97.5. You can put that in. If you've got any questions for Barbara at all, please text or type them in, and I will definitely read them out loud. But welcome to the show, Barbara Langdon. How are you doing?
I am doing terrific. How are you, John?
I'm, now that we've got the show on the air, we just had to make a couple scrambling leaps, and we've got it ready to go.
I'll tell you, we have so many different ways to connect. We always should sort of clarify, where are we meeting? Is it online? Is it at the studio? Yeah. But hey, we made it work.
We did, and my apologies out to you. I thought when you texted me this morning, I thought when I sent the email link back out that you would get it, but I should have texted you back and said, hey, I sent the link.
Would have helped.
Yes, a little bit.
That's okay.
A little bit.
As you can tell, I'm in the studio. John is not.
I am not. I'm actually at home, sitting in my studio at home.
Good for you. Good for you.
Well, good afternoon to Peter Bartolotta. How you doing there, buddy? I appreciate you chiming in there and letting me know you're out there. But you've got any? Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi, Peter.
Yes. So we've got a lot going on in Northport.
Wow.
Do you want to give us like a commission update real quick?
Wow, there are so many incredibly positive things happening. And I think the most recent is the fact that Sarasota Memorial Hospital has announced that they're starting to pull their master plan together to build a 100-bed hospital here in Northport. And we're expecting, you can see my crossed fingers, we're expecting groundbreaking in about 3 years, give or take. So that's pretty exciting. I just really hope that the building is finished while I'm still on the commission. And it's funny, you'll appreciate this, John. I am so grateful that this happened on my watch. And it is just evidence to the saying that sometimes it's better to be lucky than good.
Well, I remember, yes, I do. I agree with you. And I remember back in the day when Dr. Lee Gross was extremely instrumental in talking with, and that was back when he was with Sarasota Memorial as a billing doctor at that point instead of concierge. But he was very instrumental in getting at least the ER down here.
Right.
And working in conjunction with, of course, the commission and the hospital. But it's nice to have at least good news on the hospital front at this point. Do you know if they're going to open up an ER right off of 75 then and maybe make this maybe an urgent care on Toledo Blade, or are they going to keep that open as a ER?
Well, here's what I know about that. And that is they are planning on keeping the emergency room and ancillary services on Toledo Blade. The word is they are going to expand and enhance that. In what way, I do not know. But I'm expecting, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm expecting that there would be an emergency room trauma center at the hospital on Sumter. but Sarasota Memorial is still going through their study and research phase to decide exactly what specialties will be included. For me personally, I'm hoping it's things like, and all I can think of is anthropology, bones, joints, orthopedics. That's what I'm hoping for. So we'll see what winds up going in there. Pediatrics, I think, would be great given the demographics. I did ask about maternity, and the jury's still out on that as to whether or not there will be a maternity ward in that hospital. So we'll just have to wait and see. I'm sure that information will be forthcoming in the upcoming months.
Well, and I'm sure that they will take a good hard look at the maternity ward itself, because we are, with the average age of 48, at least we don't have an average age of 78.
Right, exactly. Like some of our surrounding communities.
Correct.
Right.
So we have a pretty huge draw when it comes to the younger population.
Right.
So hopefully they'll target some of the need there, and I'm sure they will, along with what's going to produce an income.
Right. And, sometimes people say, well, Sarasota Memorial is a nonprofit hospital. But make no mistake, because you're nonprofit doesn't mean you're supposed to bleed red at the end of every year. They need to look at their mix of services and the demographics in the area and make sure they have a good match so that they can optimize their opportunities here. But I just want to take a moment. If I were wearing a hat, I would tip it to all of the people who worked so hard over the years to bring a hospital here to the city of Northport. And I think sometimes, because my background is in marketing, and the concept of timing in marketing is just a critical concept. And things just have to be ready for these big momentous situations to occur. So I'm just really pleased that whatever the dynamics that went into Sarasota Memorial's thought process, that the current state and what we've been working so hard to accomplish in the past year did attract their attention and made them comfortable with making the move now.
Well, and I don't want to ask Peter's question the way he's written it, but I'm going to ask it a different way to kind of incorporate that in because of what you said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that a citizen can put some input or ask a question to Sarasota County, such as maybe having a senior research center here too?
Well, here's what I know. At some point in the upcoming months, Sarasota Memorial will be pulling together a resident advisory board within the city of Northport. And so I'm sure over the upcoming months, we'll be getting information on what that process will look like. And for people who are interested in participating in that process, how do they make their interests known? So the city will certainly disseminate that information. As I hear about it, I'll disseminate it on my commissioner Facebook page. But there will be plenty of opportunity for people who live here to have input into that process.
And the beautiful thing is while, yes, the building is being built and being laid out, we're 3 years out. At least we have 3 years of input to kind of get in the mix.
Correct. Absolutely.
So that's exciting news. What corner is it that they are going to be building on Sumter?
Okay, so as you're driving north towards 75, just before you get to 75 on the right-hand side is the property that the hospital owns. So that's where the building.
Kind of like the City Hall corner?
Well, up by 75. So City Hall is down by.
But I mean, it's the
right up the road from City Hall.
Yep.
Right.
So it's on that corner side of 75 for people who are interested. If you're coming south on 75 and you're getting off at the exit, it's on the left-hand side of that exit,
Correct.
not the right-hand side where you're getting off onto Sumter. So that's great news.
It's
also
great.
Great news for any of the nurses who are now driving to either Venice or Sarasota to work instead of, and I know it's going to be such a great thing to happen for the nursing staff, let alone the fact that it's probably going to make a nice little impact in 3 years for STC with their LPN program being able to work directly with Sarasota Memorial to bring LPNs in-house, which is going to be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, our city manager and myself have been working with the school board, the Sarasota County School Board, and the president of education to bring more vocational training to Northport. You might be aware that a couple of years ago, they built a vocational training building in Riverview so that the high school kids, when they graduated, could continue to get education in the trades. And so we've been having conversations that, let's have Northport be the next place where that happens. And I've not seen any announcements yet, but all indication is that Northport will indeed be the next spot that the county expands or builds a trade center, and it will be part of the STC expansion. So that's exciting too.
Yeah, I know that Mike Indy has been working really hard and pushing some of this stuff out there to really try to make STC a huge focal point. And what's really cool about that is you have now 2 exits on 75 that are going to be kind of anchored down, 1 with education and 2 with a hospital.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of a cool situation.
That is really cool. We're just so excited about it. It's just a great thing to have happen. But I'll tell you, my husband and I currently go up to Sarasota Memorial in Sarasota. And it seems that every nurse and technician we speak with lives here in Northport. So I don't know what's going to happen to the main campus in Sarasota, because all those folks are going to want to work in either Venice or Northport. So it'll be interesting. They'll have to do some heavy recruiting.
I have a feeling they're already doing that, but because and I used to work there. So my wife and I both started at Sarasota Memorial when we moved down here 23 years ago. And I have to say, it's probably one of the best hospitals. I've worked at hospitals up in Columbus, Ohio. And I got to tell you, the Duncan Finley was the man at Sarasota Memorial when we got here. And he set such a precedence, and I don't think they've taken a step backwards. I think they've gone forwards full steam. I've got a really good friend up there, David Patterson, who runs the cardiac division, who, when I had my open heart surgery, hooked me up big time, took care of me, and because of the friendships and the relationships that I've had at Sarasota Memorial, they do a phenomenal job.
Yep.
And they're always trying to stay on task and really on the cutting edge of everything. I always throw props out to David and Sarasota Memorial, and Dr. Finley is now gone and he's not part of the process anymore, but he was one that not just set the standard, but carried the standard and actually moved the meter higher. And everybody else has continued to do the same thing. So I'm really excited that I did receive that information from Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor Pete, and Mayor Emmerich really kind of was excited about that. I think that was Friday when you guys got the news, and he kind of, or maybe a little bit before that.
A little bit before that, probably a week ago Friday, or that weekend we heard the news. Last Tuesday was the meeting between the hospital and city staff and Mayor Pete. So
nice.
Yeah, well, great stuff.
I'm talking with Commissioner Langdon, Vice Mayor Langdon, and we were discussing the hospital for people who are joining us in now. The hospital is going to be being built at Sumter and 75. And if you guys have any questions at all, jump on Facebook, Real Talk 97.5 FM. Ask your questions. Peter Barlotta has already asked a couple questions, and I really appreciate any listeners who want to chime in and ask Barbara anything that you want to ask. It's an off-the-cuff kind of show, so feel free to jump in there and ask questions along the way. We've got other news. What's happening other than the hospital? What else is going on in Northport?
Wow. Well, let me bring up housing, because you and I have had a lot of conversations over, I think, almost a year now, close to a year, about housing. And it's interesting with all the crazy things happening with the market and the rapid increase in property values and rentals and leases kind of following suit, in some cases going up 50 and 60%. It's having a huge impact on our workforce here in Northport. And just to sort of set the stage, I think the last time we were together, we were talking about this. Ellen Domke was with me. And it's only gotten worse since then. You know, we have teachers and folks who are working full time at some of the local companies, homeless, you know, living in their cars because they just couldn't afford the jump in their rental. And Palm Port, which is an affordable housing development, is coming online as we speak. They're expecting the first move-ins to be in that development this September. Again, fingers crossed, with all the supply chain issues and those kinds of issues, folks' timelines have been disrupted. But I did take a look at the rental amounts, and a 3-bedroom is around $1,200. So very affordable. There are income restrictions there. I understand that their 1-bedroom apartments are already all spoken for. They're no longer taking applications for 1-bedrooms, but if you qualify for 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, they're still available. So hop on it if you haven't seen it. I did release information a few weeks ago on my Commissioner Facebook page. The city has disseminated information. You can drive by and get their phone number. It's Palm Port is on the corner of Citizens Parkway and Price. Hop on it if you have not already done that. One of the other programs that I've been working on is share a home programs. And you and I talked a little bit about that. And in a nutshell, what that is all about is that a homeowner who has an empty bedroom and might welcome some additional income every month can rent that bedroom out to a single, maybe a couple who needs that bedroom, folks who are working. And I think I don't want to jinx anything, and I don't want to give names or specifics, but I do believe we have found a nonprofit who sees developing and managing that type of program right in their wheelhouse. And that's been very exciting. One of our local employers, King Plastic, has been very involved in those conversations. And so I'm hoping we will have an announcement about that in mid to late September, and we'll be able to share information on how folks who are interested in renting a bedroom and folks who have a bedroom to rent who are feeling the pinch of inflation and might welcome having some additional income every month, how they can find each other and what that might look like. So that's pretty exciting. And hopefully in about a month, we'll have more specifics around that.
Well, and you know, there's just so much action and so many things that that commissioners, I want to say, I dabble is not a good word, but it actually is. We started dabbling in it over a year ago,
Right.
And it's amazing when you just start conversations, where the conversations lead to, and how they kind of resonate out into the community. With King Plastic, they weren't even part of our conversation originally.
Right.
And now you kind of connecting some dots, and that just shows you the power of one, a positive attitude, but two, really trying to find remedies for really issues that aren't directly connected with you every day. When you wake up in the morning, you're not thinking, how do I fix this? But if you don't talk about it, nobody else does either.
Yeah, and it's a funny thing, because when I think about the mission I was on 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when I was running for commission, all about economic development, all about bringing jobs here, and I've not wavered off that. That is still one of my primary objectives. I think for the long-term health of our city, it's vital that we attract businesses here with good paying jobs and robust benefit packages and career paths and training opportunities. We need to have that here in Northport for our workers. But boy, if you bring those companies here and no one can afford to live here, it kind of blows up in your face. There's the human toll and the long-term negative impact that homelessness has on folks who are searching for affordable housing. And we needed to address it. So it's just kind of interesting to me in reflection that you just never know what you're going to wind up working on. I think we all had our own motivations and goals and objectives when we ran for public office. But, then there's what happens in your community. And I think as an elected official, you need to be able to move outside your comfort zone and go places. I think of Star Trek, go places where no one else has gone before. But, things happen in your community and you have to address them. We're obligated to address them. Who would have predicted
No, no,
has happened? No one would have seen that coming.
nobody. I mean, we felt the trends, but we never thought it would kind of blow up that way.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you this way, because I know that Peter's listening, and I've had him on the show, and we've talked about the fact that jobs that have to come here have to support Northport, but they also have to support the growth and the really the economic feel. So if we don't bring jobs here that actually support buying a home, we're actually not bringing the right jobs here. But I want to step back for just a second and ask you, you've been on 2 years, right?
Right. It'll be 2 years in November.
So this is not a grade for you, but I want you to grade for the 2 years you've been here. Give Northport a grade, and then give an explanation of why you give the grade and where we should be looking and leaning from this point forward.
I don't know if a grade, I would be uncomfortable giving a grade, because it's unfair to judge when 3 or 4 years ago, the strategy and the vision for the city was so different. It would be like having an employee in a job and then changing the job description and then giving that employee an F because they no longer are performing at a level you want, but the job changed, so I would put it this way.
I'm not talking individual, though. What I'm talking about is if you were to grade the city because first off, let's clarify a couple things. We can't always dictate what company's going to pick to move here.
Right.
So that's kind of like saying how many more auto parts stores we need. I don't care how many auto parts stores come here. Their job. And they're coming here because they counted rooftops and cars, and they
Right,
figured, oh my
right.
God, there's money in there for me.
And we're
So
a commuting community right now. Everyone
correct.
goes somewhere else to work. So,
So let me give the grade as a consumer on this side of it. I give us maybe a high C, maybe a B, and here's why: we've had growth, but we haven't anchored down, and quite frankly, the hospital is going to be really a solidifying factor for us to bring
that's
in some of those other
that's
jobs.
potentially a huge accelerator because
Absolutely.
the hospital itself brings jobs. And some of our workers who are now going to Venice or Port Charlotte or Sarasota will stay here and work here and have lunch at local restaurants and do their errands and shopping at local businesses where now that business is happening elsewhere. So, I mean, I would put it this way, John, we have put some very important pieces in place for this city to start accelerating its success. So the grade, and I would probably agree with you, maybe it's a C plus, B minus, but that doesn't adequately communicate some of the foundational pieces that were put in place.
So,
And the key ones are with staff. I mean, we have hired some incredible people over the past year and things that were problematic. So I'll pick one. Northport has really never enjoyed a reputation in the business community as being easy to work with. And so now we have a new NDS director who has brought a concept of, and I'll probably get the term wrong, but simultaneous processes. So it's like concurrent permitting, I think is the proper term. In the past, the city's process was if someone was building or expanding in Northport, they'd get to the first gold post, everything would stop, an inspector would have to come out. It either matched or didn't match, whatever. And then once that happened, then the next phase, and everything was disjointed. And your second inspection might say, oh, but this needs to be redone, something that was approved in the first, just a nightmare. It
right.
would add time and cost and all of that kind of stuff. So Elena Ray is bringing to the city concurrent permitting. So what does that mean? The plans can all be reviewed concurrently and the approvals given in a much more integrated way so that it could take potentially months, 6 to 12 months out of a process for someone who's building or expanding here. And time is money in the business community. So with one hire, if that's all Elena does, she will have a tremendously beneficial impact on the ability for companies to come here and build or existing companies to expand here. So we've done some really great hires. We now have a manager in planning. And these are folks who bring with them experience in other communities. They all have Florida experience, but some of them have been out of state as well. And so they're bringing with them new ideas and ways of improving how the city does business. And I find that really exciting. And, you talk about economic development and bringing companies here. It is mind boggling. It sounds simple, right? But it's mind boggling how much goes into making that process easy or not for a city to accomplish. And one of the challenges we've been having, particularly with this super hot housing market, is finding landowners who are willing to sell into the industrial sector because they can make more money quicker selling to home builders. We have had 2 or 3 companies very, very interested in building their businesses, relocating their businesses here to Northport. We can't find land for them. So you'll see some interesting things in the 2023-24 budget. And it hasn't been approved yet, but we currently have $2 million in the economic development bucket for the city to start acquiring parcels so that we can assemble enough land. And if we have a manufacturer who wants to come here and needs 10 acres and none of our, current landowners want to sell to that person, the city can sell to that person. So again, we're putting building blocks in place that putting a grade on it at this particular point in time really doesn't do justice to the work that's being done to facilitate or enable economic development and companies coming here with good paying jobs.
Well, and I'm kind of glad we did put a grade on it. Because, and I'm going to tell you why. I know it's difficult, but if we would have never had the conversation, if we didn't start it out, and you wouldn't have educated everyone if we wouldn't have started with a grade. And I'm not a fan of grades.
No.
I really am not. But to really kind of set that tone and wake people up is that you kind of agreed with me at a C+ to a B, and that's okay, because here's the beauty in a grade. Okay, you guys are working to get an A.
Right.
And you're setting up the future, which
we'll get an A. We will get an A on my watch. I'm convinced of that.
Nice, and that's the beauty of the grade. And when I was in school, it was always, can I get my C so I can pass? My friends got all the A's. They used all the A's up at my school. I don't know what happened to me, but I just got to tell you, I wasn't grade driven like some of my friends were, and I haven't always been grade driven. I'm performance driven. So the nice thing is that the grade is the grade, but the performance side of things had to change within the city walls, really the city walls, to change everything about producing a city that can function in the commercial industry.
Right.
And there has been some big additions. Well, King Plastics is not small. They're growing. They're pushing things out. We've had the and I can't think of it. They moved over from Englewood and they put their location on Toledo Blade, and they have their national spot with all the heavy paving equipment.
Oh yes.
Kind of
I drive by them almost every day.
Me too, and it's gone for the moment. But they've come here. We've had Walmart open several different locations. Not that there's a huge impact, but if you think back to 2008, we didn't have hardly anything here.
Right, and now we have the Benderson Logistics Center.
They just built it up.
That's huge, because we simply, if a company wants to come here but doesn't have an appetite for building, we have no place to put them. So there, I think there's still space left in the Benderson Center, but
because there's two very nice sized buildings now in Toledo Blade that are really up modern, up to date. Not that concrete walls and electric aren't going to change anything, but there is something to be said when you add industrial buildings into an area that's really driven by industrial businesses, where a lot of our people, still drive away to go to work. And I don't know that, truthfully, that's ever going to change. And I don't know that that's a big driving point for anyone on the commission, is to change us from a bedroom community. I'd love to get rid of the name, because I think the name just labels us something that we're so much more than. Because a lot of our guys open businesses, and yes, while they drive away to go to work, their businesses are anchored in Northport.
Right.
So There's something to be said about guys who start businesses, they're anchored in Northport, and yet they're bringing all that revenue back in by driving out and doing repairs and doing ACs. And, and I hate to say it, but those jobs now, I ran into an AC guy the other day.
They make huge dollars.
Oh, they're making big money, because he's like, I've been doing this for 3 years and I'm making like $45 an hour. And I'm like,
right.
What?
Right. It's incredible. And some of the other things that I'm really excited about is where we're dramatically expanding our economic development footprint. And we're also going to have a focus in economic development on local small businesses. We're going to have a focus on retail. So I know my foodie friends will be very excited with that news, because we will, and I think it will be a consultant for the retail area. But how do we attract those nice restaurants here? How do we attract some of those nicer chains to come here and make Northport more interesting for that type of commercial development? So again, that's not something that I've been terribly focused on, but I'm delighted that we are going to have a focus on that going into 2023, assuming the budget gets approved the way it's currently configured. And we'll also have a staff focus on small business and even home-based businesses, of which we have a ton.
Right.
And how do we identify now some home-based businesses, and I would put my own business in that category, never a goal. I never had a goal of creating a marketing agency. I wanted to be solo. That's really what I wanted to do. And other home-based business owners probably are in that same camp. But others are starting in their home and they definitely want to grow and develop. And so what we'll be looking at next year is what can the city do to help them. And I'm delighted that we have such a good relationship with our chamber, with Bill Gunnan and his staff and members of the chamber. That is really, really important. And I've worked with a number of chambers from Bradenton to Naples, and not all of the chambers enjoy the kind of relationship that the Northport Chamber has with city government. We have a very positive type of collaborative relationship, and that is really going to serve the city well as we move into the future.
Well, I think we all kind of sit back sometimes and think we've been around here for a long, long time, and we really haven't been, truthfully, as far as years as being a city go.
Right.
And we were empty. We were an empty city.
Right.
We had houses. We had one strip mall. We at one point had, we've got a McDonald's. I was blessed to be here when we had McDonald's and Wendy's.
Right.
That's what I moved into was McDonald's, Wendy's, one Publix, and one Winn-Dixie.
Wow.
One Publix. And it's where Goodwill is. Okay.
Yeah.
So think about now we're only talking 23 years. Right. And an economic downturn.
Right.
Okay. And now COVID. So you've got an economic downturn and COVID, and really the with COVID was different than the economic downturn in the fact that we are, as a society, now even the older generation has had to learn to survive through COVID, to trust the internet to order their supplies. So it's changed even the grocery store shopping. It's changed going to Amazon and getting your stuff and having some guy run it to your door the same day now, not 3 days later. So it actually put us in a different spot, where it's also put other cities in a different spot now. A lot of these cities have big empty buildings
Right.
that nobody's converting over to anything because big box stores have now changed what they're doing.
Right. Right.
There's a store up in Ohio, a grocery store that my listeners would know. It's called Kroger. Kroger is now in Florida
Right.
without stores.
Mm.
They're just doing grocery delivery in Florida
Wow.
without a store. Now, I don't know if it's here yet, but I did see it up in like the Jacksonville area. So they're a grocery store is now opening a warehouse and getting your cart ready to go out the door. And so it's changing grocery habits.
Right.
And we talked about this years ago in the industry that people were going to have to change their buying habits to what the new internet was bringing, and people didn't want to do it. And that was when the internet was kind of new, and it wasn't that long ago, folks. It really wasn't.
Well, I have heard COVID called the Great Accelerator. So there were certain trends already happening, like the movement to online shopping from in-store shopping. That was already happening.
Yep.
And then COVID put it on steroids.
Yep.
And, companies, in order to maintain operations, allowed more and more employees to work from home. And now those employees, some of them don't want to return to the office.
Right.
And the companies are looking at it and saying, gee, it hasn't had a negative impact on productivity that we were worried about. And now we can shrink our physical footprint and reduce our overhead costs. This is a great thing. And whoever would have thought that during COVID, Northport just exploded in terms of growth and development, with people for the first time being able to live where they want to live, sort of independent of where their companies were located. So many things have happened that I never would have guessed and are sort of counterintuitive to what we've experienced in the past. And I'll tell you, I love my job. You just never know from day to day, what kind of situation is going to confront you, or, what's going to happen in terms of the economic environment. And I, for one, I embrace change, and I'm not the kind of person that has to have every question answered before I'm ready to move forward. You kind of read the tea leaves and, gather as much information as is available at that particular point in time. And so often you have to make a leap. You just never have all the information you'd like to have before you decide on a course of action. And I'll tell you, the past 2 years have just been incredible from that point of view. I never would have anticipated some of the things that have happened.
What do you see? And I don't want to say see. What do you feel like should be maybe the top? And I'm not talking identifying companies, but strategically, if you were to set a goal for the city on what to look at, like 3 really hot buttons. Now we can take the hospital off. Okay.
Right. Check that box.
Okay? So we check that box. So what are 3 things that you feel like the city of Northport, with the infrastructure being at City Hall changing, and that people's ability to really, maybe enhance the building process. So that's another check mark that needed to happen. Right. So what do you see of 3 things that really the community should maybe, hey, let's sink our teeth into this, rally behind it, and whatever we need to do to get this information out and start talking about Northport.
Yeah, you really ask me tough questions.
I appreciate.
I watch your shows with other folks and you don't hit them with these like really tough questions. But I would say we have to keep an eye on what's going on the national and international scene. So for example, our federal government just passed the CHIPS bill, which is to encourage chip manufacture and related kinds of things, businesses that we've pushed offshore and really circled back during COVID to bite us in the nose. And so what does that mean for Northport? What are the opportunities coming from that type of investment at the federal level that we can leverage here to accelerate our growth and development? And so a big part of that is when I look at our economic development strategy, again, we have some really good foundational pieces in place, but I don't think we've finished the work of looking forward 5 and 10 years. What does that really look like? And proactively going out to grab it. So I think we've had a very research-oriented kind of strategy, which was vitally important. The Camoin study was vitally important for helping the commission and the community to sort of pull what we believed to be true all into one place and related to each other so that we could understand the importance of making certain kinds of investments, like putting in infrastructure to the areas of the city identified by that study. So I think, is that two things or one thing?
That's
I'm
two.
not sure.
I would put that at two.
Two.
And quickly with the last.
And then the third thing is we're making a big jump in the 23-24 budget in terms of adding staff. And that will really, really help us. For the first time, we will be adequately staffed to help get the city of Northport to the next level, which is what we've been talking about for a very, very long time. So
awesome.
we need to continue to support staff.
So this is John Rawlings, WKDW Radio, saying thanks for listening in. And the reason I ask you such tough questions is because you answer them. How about that? So I appreciate your time, Barbara, and love you dearly. Great work. Keep up the good work, and all the commissioners keep up the solid work, and let's have a great year.
Great. Thank you, John. Always a pleasure.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.